All right, well, it is 6:30, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to this evening's program, Monarch Mania. We are joined by Steve Jacobson, who is the Assistant Nature Center Manager at the Anita B. Gorman Discovery Center. My name is Beth. I'm the Adult Programming Librarian here at the Mid-Continent Public Library. And before we get started, we do have a couple of housekeeping items for this evening. We are going to ask folks to remain muted. We are recording the program and we want to have a good audio quality. And we do have a large group this evening. I have put the link to tonight's survey in the chat. So we hope you'll take a few moments at the end of the program to fill that out for us and let us know how we did. If you have suggestions for other program topics that you'd like to see programs on, we always like when folks share those. And these surveys help us continue to offer programs like these for our customers. We are going to ask you to type any questions in chat. I will save time at the end and we will go through those questions. I also wanted to mention some upcoming programs that we have. I'm going to share my screen here. And the first program I want to mention is Vaqueros, the Origins of the American Cowboy. This one is being held both in person and virtually at a number of dates and locations throughout our system. But we're going to be joined by Jean Chavez, who's a speaker with the Kansas Humanities Bureau and works at the Kansas City Museum, to discover the story of the Spanish vaqueros and how their methods of managing and moving livestock on horseback influenced American settlers and gave rise to the American cowboys. And I will mention, the October 15th one is at our Lee's Summit location as well as on Zoom. So that one, when you register, you do need to say whether you'll be attending in person or in Zoom, so that we are able to send the Zoom link out to folks. The second program I want to mention, on October 9th at 3:30, this is at our Grandview branches on Zoom. We're going to be joined by Taylor Gardner, who is going to be talking about Medicare, what the original Medicare covers, changes that are happening for 2024, 2025, and the differences between Part C and D and Medicare supplement plans. That one is also being held at a number of branches throughout the system. So if you're wanting to attend in person and aren't close to Grandview, you can check out our calendar of events for other locations. On October 17th on Zoom, we're going to have our friends with University of Missouri Extension that will be talking about gluten-free diets and popular gluten-free products, as well as tips for modifying recipes. So whether you're looking towards a gluten-free diet for health or for weight loss, they should have some good suggestions for everybody. And then on October 22nd at 6:30, we will have Lisa Richter with the Burr Oak Woods location here in the Kansas City Metro, who's going to be talking about the importance of bats for our ecosystem and the 14 species of bats that can be found here in Missouri, and how you can encourage them to come and eat insects on your property. And that one is on Zoom. And then finally, on October 24th at 11, We have Tom Tucker and his wife Tina, who will be presenting a armchair travel program exploring Lake Michigan and Lake Superior. So lots of beaches, lighthouses, waterfalls. Great option. That one is at our Riverside branch as well as on Zoom. So with that, I am going to stop my share here so that I can turn it back over to Steve. And Steve, as I mentioned, works for the Missouri Department of Conservation and is the Assistant Nature Center Manager at the Anita B. Gorman Discovery Center here in Kansas City. He's worked there for 18 years as both a naturalist and the assistant manager, educating the public on the migration of monarch butterflies and conservation efforts is a passion of his. Over the years, he has helped coordinate several monarch programs and tagging efforts for all ages. So with that, let's turn it over to Steve and give him a warm welcome.
All right. Thank you, Beth. Want to make sure everybody can see the Monarch Mania screen here. Is that up, Beth? Are we all good?
It is.
Okay, excellent. So like Beth said and introduced me, I am the assistant manager at the Anita B. Gorman Discovery Center. And tonight we are going to learn about and discuss everything monarchs. We'll be going through a lot of different things related to monarchs, how to tell males from females, discussing mimicry, the life cycle we'll hit on. We'll talk about the population trends currently, what you can do as a homeowner to help out the monarch population. And then, of course, there's going to be plenty of time at the end for questions. So as we go along through the presentation, please type in questions into the chat. I'll make sure to allow time at the end. If I happen to not get to all the questions tonight, take note of my email address. You may certainly reach out to me with any questions you might come up with after tonight's presentation. Right. Hold on, trying to advance my slide, Beth. I lost my little. There we go. Sorry about that. Just a couple of things that I will promote from the Discovery Center. This Saturday, if you want to come and learn more about monarchs in person, we will be doing a Monarch Mania event from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. this Saturday. We hope to have the public net several monarchs that we can tag. We'll have some other activities. It's for all ages. We're also going to be giving away some native plants at that event. So if you want to get some couple of plants to put into your landscape, this would be a good Saturday to come down. And again, that event is free. And then on October 19th is our Halloween special event from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. On Saturday evening. And that is a family-friendly kind of a trunk or treat style event. So bring the families down and we'll have lots and lots of candy to give away and lots of fun. All right, so to get started with monarchs, I'm not going to obviously read through all this on the screen. I think Beth is going to share this with you, this PowerPoint, so you'll have this on your end. But monarchs are an endangered species according to the International Union for Conservation of Nature. They are not endangered in the state of Missouri, but according to the IUCN, they are an endangered species. So what that organization and that status does, it does promote more of a conservation awareness for monarchs. and puts a higher need tracking their population and the conservation for them. Monarchs are a herbivore, so they rely on nectar. They also rely on milkweed. So the caterpillars, of course, they're eating the milkweed. The adult monarchs, they're relying on the nectar from flowers. They don't have a lot of predators, and that's mainly because milkweed has toxins in it. And as the caterpillars consume the milkweed, they get the toxins into their body. It does not hurt the monarchs at all. But that toxin is very, it's poisonous to other animals. So they really do not have predators like birds or anything that are going to go after a monarch. So that helps them out considerably with their survival. As far as their lifespan, monarch butterflies generally live 5 weeks in the summertime. So they don't have a very long lifespan in the summer. The migratory monarchs this time of year that are trying to get to Mexico, they will live anywhere from 6 to 9 months. We'll talk more about the lifespan later in this presentation, and we'll talk about the different generations too. The monarch is the only butterfly that does a true two-way migration like birds. There are other butterflies that do migrate, that move around, but the monarch is the only one that does it like birds, and it ends up being around close to 3,000 miles that they will migrate. So before we go any further with monarchs, I did just want to touch on just 3 other butterflies that will do some migrating, just so we're kind of aware of some others that are out there. The painted ladies, this is a very broad group of butterflies that really can be found all over the world. They can fly as fast as 30 miles an hour. So even though they're a very, very small butterfly, when they get into some strong winds, they can really move along. They are basically migrating because of the food source that they need. So as winter approaches in the northern climates, they have to move to survive. So they're going to head further south where it's warmer. Red admiral butterflies, if any of you are familiar with stinging nettle, that is actually the host plant for red admiral butterflies. So the next time you see stinging nettle, just remember it does have a good purpose. And red admiral butterflies, they can fly at speeds up to like 12 miles per hour as well. So even though if they're a very, very small butterfly, they're going to be able to move from place to place to still have a food source. The cloudless sulfur on the right, I put this on there because it has a very unique fact about it that I found kind of humorous today as I was putting this together. The cloudless sulfur, the males, they will fly as fast as they can to get to their migrating location, but it's the females that will lag behind and conserve energy to get to the location. So I found that kind of humorous. The males are just all gung-ho, get to where they need to get to. Anything that's in the pea family with plants, that is going to be the host plant for the cloudless sulfurs. So when you're thinking about your gardens, landscape, that's something you can think about with them. There's 2 different websites there. You can visit those to kind of get more information about some other migrating butterflies. But tonight we are going to focus simply on the monarch. So our first thing we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about the gender identification with monarchs. When you see monarchs flying around, they're going to look almost identical, a male and a female. It's very, very difficult. Their markings are about the same as far as colors and stripes. There is one difference, though, and that is on the one set of wings. The male will have 2 black dots. It's called a pouch. And that pouch is a scent gland, essentially, to attract the female. So that top photo of the male, you can see the black dots. And then the bottom photo of the female does not have the black dots. So that is how you can tell the difference between a male and a female. And a lot of times the monarch has to land on a flower, or you have to be able to catch it to be able to identify those dots and see them. With mimicry, so mimicry, that word simply means to pretend to be something else. This is very common in the wildlife world. There's lots of different animals that will mimic something else. I had a visitor came in today with a little baby snake, and they had it in a container and it was rattling its tail, and they thought it was a rattlesnake. And I said, no, it's just a juvenile black rat snake. And snakes, they will rattle their tail as much as they can to pretend to sound all ferocious like a rattlesnake. But that's a form of mimicry. With monarchs, monarchs have that orange and black stripes, the white dots. There is another butterfly called the viceroy. The viceroy looks almost identical to the monarch. The difference and the way you can tell a viceroy from a monarch is if you look on the smaller set of wings, so it's circled there in the picture, they have a black line that runs through that wing. The monarch does not have that black line. That is really the only difference. Viceroys, they use that mimicry to protect them, because we talked about how monarchs, they consume that toxic milkweed, so they have very few predators. So that helps out the viceroy in turn as well. So this next part we're going to spend some time on is the life cycle. So a monarch life cycle, basically the entire life cycle is 30 days. So we're going to start off kind of working ourselves through this life cycle. And the next couple of slides, we'll go into this as well. But a female monarch, it is going to lay anywhere from 300 to 500 eggs in its lifetime. And that's a staggering number when you consider that a monarch in the summertime only lives about 5 weeks. So once a female monarch emerges from the chrysalis and is an adult monarch flying around, really all that female is doing is mating with the male and laying eggs. She will generally lay 1 egg on each milkweed plant. Occasionally there might be more than 1, but generally it's 1 egg on a plant. She'll move on to the next plant. She'll drop an egg there. The eggs, you can find them typically on the underside of milkweed leaves. So if you're looking for an egg, which you can see a picture of one there, and I'll have a better picture in the next slide. Look on the underside of the leaves. They kind of look like a football shape, kind of a cream color. The egg is going to be in that stage for about 3 to 5 days. And then the caterpillar will come out, or the larvae, and the caterpillar goes through 5 instars. And what an instar is, it's the amount of time between their shedding. So a caterpillar sheds its skin just like a snake will shed its skin as it grows. And that time in between those sheds is called an instar. So when it gets to the 5th instar, then it's going to go into the classic J shape. It's going to suspend itself from something. It's very difficult to find a chrysalis in the wild because they generally do not create the chrysalis on the milkweed. They will crawl maybe to a neighboring stem of a bush where they're very, very isolated and protected. And that's where they'll suspend themselves into that J shape, go into the chrysalis, and then after about 30 days, they will emerge as the adult butterfly. So this next slide, this shows some much better photos. So again, that upper left photo, that is a very close-up shot of the egg. And to give you perspective, that is a needle, a sewing needle on the top right, so you can see the size of the egg. And again, you need to look on the underside of the milkweed leaves to find those eggs. Monarchs this time of year, some of them are still laying eggs, but we're getting pretty late into the migratory season for monarchs that there's not going to be nearly as many eggs laid, especially around here. So, but that's the eggs. And then the middle photo on the left, that is the little caterpillar coming out of the egg sac. The first thing that the caterpillar eats is the egg sac itself. So before it starts munching away on the milkweed, its first food is to eat the rest of that egg sac. They're not very pretty when they're first come out. They got a big black head. But then as they start eating and they get into a larger caterpillar, they're going to start to get the color. You can see the picture there in the middle on the right of the caterpillar munching away on the milkweed. Bottom left is the chrysalis. So very, I kind of like to think emperor-like, very beautiful with that golden band on there, the gold spots. And then you have the adult monarch on the bottom right. So again, just to kind of recap here on the life cycle, it's about 3 to 5 days in the egg stage. The caterpillar is about 10 to 14 days in that stage. Chrysalis is going to be about another 10 to 14 days before the adult emerges. So about a full 30 days for the entire monarch life cycle. So a monarch, the monarch migration, this map has been around for a long time. Monarch Watch put it out. They're located in Lawrence, Kansas. And the monarch migration, there's basically 2 different populations of monarchs. So everything west of the Rocky Mountains, that would be the western population of monarchs. We do not see them. They will, in the summertime, they're going to work their way up into southern Canada, Oregon, Washington, Idaho. And then in the wintertime, they will generally overwinter along the California coast. Some of that population will also go down into Mexico and join up with the population that migrates through the Midwest. But generally, most of the Western population overwinters along the California coast. The Eastern population would be everything from the Rocky Mountains all the way to the East Coast. And if you look kind of in southern Canada, there's a dotted line up there. That is the northern range of milkweed. So the reason why they can't go any further north than southern Canada is there is nothing for the monarchs to eat, the caterpillars. So milkweed does not grow any further north than that. So that is their stopping point. And then during the summer, of course, we have them around here, and then all the way up to the north, as well as Oklahoma, Arkansas has them. And then in the wintertime or in the fall, now they are working their way south, and they will end up in Mexico where the blue star is. And that's where they'll overwinter. So we're going to talk here shortly about the different generations, because there's multiple generations that do the entire migration. It's not the same monarch doing the whole thing. And I will add on this map, there is a small population of the eastern monarchs that will come down and they will winter in Florida. It's not a big population, and sometimes they really don't leave Florida because Florida is warm enough. They just kind of stay there all the time. So I did want to mention that before we move on. All right, so to understand the generations, what we're going to start with, what I'll kind of start explaining is we're going to pretend or think about the monarchs that have made it to Mexico. So let's say that it's the end of November. There's monarchs that have made it to Mexico. And that group of monarchs that makes it to Mexico in the fall, they're the fourth generation. Okay, so we're going to start with the fourth generation, and then we'll kind of work our way through these others. But the fourth generation, and generally that's the monarchs that are flying now south. That generation of monarchs, we want them to make it all the way to Mexico. And if they do, they will overwinter in Mexico. And that generation, the fourth generation, will leave Mexico in March, kind of early to mid-March. They will start flying north. They won't get very far. They might just get into Texas, and then that generation is going to lay eggs. And that generation, when those eggs are born, that's going to be the first generation of monarchs from those that made it to Mexico. That first generation, they're going to keep going north. We get the first generation here in Missouri, usually maybe in April, late April. Remember, they need milkweed and they need pollinator plants. So if we have a winter that goes really, really late, we're not going to see the monarchs here until a little bit later. But the first generation, they will then lay eggs, and the second generation will be born into the summer months. That second generation is going to lay eggs, and then we'll have our third generation, which would be the great grandchildren of those that made it to Mexico. So that third generation is going to be around, maybe late June, July. The fourth generation, they will be born in typically late July through August, even into September. Okay. And the fourth generation, now again, they're the ones that are going to live the longest and hopefully make it all the way to Mexico. So the fourth generation, they can live 6 to 9 months. If they make it all the way to Mexico, they have a very long lifespan. The first, second, and third generations, they are only going to live about 5 weeks. So they have a much shorter lifespan. And the females are laying anywhere from 300 to 500 eggs during her life. All right. So this this slide here is what will show the population trends. And the picture on your left is a fir tree in the Oyamel forest in Mexico where the monarchs overwinter. If they get there, they will generally cling to the trees. They will fly around a little bit during the nice warm days down there, but otherwise they're clinging to the trees, to the trunks of those fir trees. And the Oyamel forest is not a very big forest. It's a very kind of small area, and for whatever reason, it is where the monarchs choose to go. So it's where they have always migrated to, that eastern population and some of the western population. On the right there is the total area occupied by monarch colonies during the overwintering. So the way this is measured, it's measured in hectares. So a hectare is an area of land. They kind of do an estimate of how many monarchs can occupy 1 hectare, and then they come up with what they are occupying. So, whoops, sorry about that. So if you look on the far right of this chart, last year, 23 and 24, it was 0.90 hectares. Okay, that is the lowest amount of space in the Oyamel forest that they've occupied since 13 and 14. So it's the second lowest amount. And basically what happened last year, there was more that made it. There was a larger area that was occupied. But that area of Mexico had a pretty strong winter storm that wiped out a lot of monarchs. So we'll talk about kind of some things that go into, the monarch population and stuff. But that number on the far right is concerning. It's very low, and essentially that is about 2.2 acres. All right, so if we put it in what we understand with acres, that would be 2.2 acres is what those monarchs were covering. This year I have seen the fewest monarchs flying around, here in the summertime than I've seen in a long time. So it is very concerning. Now, the encouraging thing that we have to remember is that females can lay 300 to 500 eggs. So, if the weather cooperates, they have the pollinator plants, they don't run into drought conditions or storms that wipe out a population in the winter, the population can bounce back very quickly because of how many eggs a female can lay. So hopefully that number changes for this next overwintering season, and we see it go up, because this last year was pretty concerning. So what can you do to help? So there's for somebody who is a homeowner, has a backyard, the biggest thing you can do is plant milkweed and plant native pollinator plants, and also native milkweed. So stay away from anything that's non-native. Now with that, a lot of people like to plant zinnias. Butterflies love zinnias. That is an okay flower to plant through the summertime. It provides a lot of blooms. It will provide the nectar for the adult monarchs. I'm going to push natives. You're going to hear me say that a lot tonight. But that's what I believe in is best for not only monarchs, but other wildlife and stuff. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can kind of incorporate or maybe develop a monarch garden in your yard. So a truly effective monarch habitat will be at least 100 square feet. Okay, 10 foot by 10 foot. So not very large to be truly effective. In that habitat, you need a combination of milkweed and a combination of nectar plants. You can create a nice monarch habitat in, poor soil conditions, wet soil conditions, really dry soil conditions, because there are a variety of plants that you can choose for each one. So if we look at this slide here, this kind of highlights a few different, what I think are kind of some popular native plants that you could incorporate into a landscape. New England aster, that is a beautiful native flowering plant that will flower in the fall. And what's important to think about with monarchs is you want to provide them something in the spring, summer, and fall, because we're going to have those adults, we're going to have the caterpillars, all three of those seasons. So New England aster is going to be a good one for the fall. Purple coneflower is going to be a really good one for kind of late spring into the summer. Blazing star is a really good one. Goldenrod is blooming right now. There's some areas I've seen where it's just amazing color with goldenrod. That's a great one for the fall. And then milkweed, that's going to come up in the spring. It will continue to grow and flourish through the summer into the fall before it starts dying back. All right, so again, you're going to have this this handout on your end, so you can look at this in a little bit more detail. But this is a diagram of what you can do for a monarch planting if you have dry soil conditions, but that soil is kind of well drained, so it's not, the water gets out of it pretty easily. So again, a minimum of 100 square feet. You want a minimum 10 milkweeds of 2 or more species, and a minimum 4 biennial or perennial native species for nectar. So down at the bottom is the legend of the different types of plants, and then how you could locate those in that bed. So like the wild bergamot is kind of more on the perimeter. And that's kind of, some of these are much taller than others, so that's kind of how that's laid out. But this kind of gives you an idea. This comes from our Missouri Department of Conservation, butterfly garden layout. So you can refer to this again. Now, if you have a area in your yard that is just kind of constantly wet, for example, like a rain garden, it's poorly drained soils, this would be a way you could make a monarch planting for that. So this is going to have plants that thrive in wet conditions, like marsh milkweed, New England aster, cup plant, blue lobelia is another one. So again, it shows you how to arrange them. So this is, I wanted to share this with you tonight because a lot of times people really want to create a good habitat or a good monarch planting, but they're not sure how to start. As far as where to get plants, there are all kinds of places now that are selling native plants. A lot of the places in across Missouri that, used to be just more non-native, they're now selling a lot of native stuff. So it's pretty easy to find. So – population factors that go into play. So habitat loss, and the habitat loss is happening both at places where monarchs are using in the summertime or migrating through. And it's also happening in Mexico at the Oyamel forest. There's a lot of deforestation that's happening down there. And then habitat loss that's just happening, in our own backyard too. I'm going to encourage you to avoid growing tropical milkweed. Tropical milkweed has become very, very popular because it's really pretty. Okay. It grows very easily. The problem with tropical milkweed is that it is not native, and it will grow longer into the fall, even early winter. And it kind of tricks the monarchs into kind of a delayed migration. So if you choose to grow tropical milkweed, and the monarchs will use it, the caterpillars will use it, but what I would encourage you to do is that the end of September, cut the milkweed back, all right, so that it doesn't trick the monarchs into hanging around longer than they need to. There's all kinds of, great natural native choices for milkweed. If you want to learn more about tropical milkweed, I would ask you to check out that Xerxes Society website. But it is non-native, and it's not one that I would encourage. Mother Nature is probably one of the bigger ones with monarchs. Drought, storms, winter weather in Mexico. Everything that Mother Nature throws at monarchs can impact their migration and impact their population. The hurricane that's hitting Florida, for that eastern population that's over more towards the coast, that's definitely going to impact that population of monarchs over there. I'll touch on this just a little bit. There is a parasite that also impacts monarchs. I'm going to refer to it as OE. And this single-celled organism, it needs a host, all right? And it'll choose the monarch as the host in order to survive. The thing with this parasite is that if it gets into a monarch, it'll be through the entire life cycle. So let's say a adult female picks up the parasite. When she lays the eggs, that parasite is now in the eggs. So 300 to 500 eggs, all right, that parasite would be in there. It would be in the caterpillars, and it would continue into the adults that emerge. Now, adult butterflies, if they have the parasite, when they emerge from the chrysalis, they will typically emerge and not be able to survive. They will have deformed wings. It'll kind of look like they just weren't able to straighten out a wing sometimes. So you can see that on the left in that picture. The middle picture is a chrysalis that has the OE parasite in it. And then on the right is what that looks like, what the parasite looks like under a microscope. It is spread communally. So if you get a lot of monarchs that cling together for kind of an extended time, and one of them has it, pretty soon a lot of them are going to have that parasite. So there is not a way to eliminate this, other than my message is be very mindful about how many caterpillars you bring in and raise in an aquarium, and doing that, because the more that you put together, you're raising the chances of this parasite spreading, if one of them has it. And a lot of times you can't tell if a caterpillar has it or not. Here at the Discovery Center, we do have each year this time, we will have a small aquarium where we will have some caterpillars on display. I only have 3 in the aquarium. I don't do any more than that. And my guidance, kind of MDC's guidance, is wherever you collect that caterpillar from, that is where that butterfly should be released. So please don't collect from 30, 40 miles away and then release the monarch in a completely different spot. It does kind of mess with their migration. So err on the smaller, lesser side if you do bring some in. It is a fun thing to do. It's a good teaching moment for kids, so I completely understand that, but just kind of err on the side of less is better. The monarch tagging. So this weekend, this Saturday, we will hopefully be doing some tagging. This was a citizen science effort that started in 1992 by Monarch Watch in Lawrence, Kansas, continues today, and it is a way to help track the population and get citizens involved to be concerned about monarchs and help track that migration and that population effort. So the tag is essentially like a little license plate. It's a little round sticker. It goes in a very specific spot on their wing where it doesn't impact their flight. And there is a series of letters, numbers on there that, so the tags that I have are not like any other tags that anybody else has ordered. So at the end of the tagging season, I submit all that information to Monarch Watch. They can then use that information in their studies and research with the migration and population. So this is just a little bit more, shows you where that tag goes down there in the photo. So if you have never done tagging, and if you got nothing going on this Saturday, I'd encourage you to come out because hopefully we can catch some. And even I think it works best with kids. Kids have the smaller fingers, so they can attach the tags a little easier than I can. All right, so as far as monarch tagging, the migration, so here in the Kansas City area, the peak in monarch abundance generally is from September 14th through the 26th, kind of give or take, okay? In reading information from Monarch Watch this year, they expect that the tagging season could go longer, kind of into October. So you have to think like a monarch. If it's still warm up north, they still have what they need up there. So they're gonna kind of lag behind. But once a cold front hits up there and the temperatures drop into the 40s, then they're gonna start pushing south. And we're gonna see more and more of them come through here, hopefully, as they work their way to Mexico. So we kind of set between that 40 and 35 latitude range there on this map. So, on that previous slide, all right, so 39 latitude, that's kind of where we fall as far as a peak migration. All right, on this, I put this one in today too. I went on Journey North is another monarch site. They also deal with other wildlife, but this is kind of an interesting chart because this chart will show you people that have reported monarch fall roosts. And what a roost is, monarchs do not fly at night. They fly only during the daytime. They rely on sunlight to kind of help orientate them where they need to go. And at night, they will congregate in trees together. And so these are folks that have reported a roost. So you can see there's all kinds of cities on there. These are, I mean, again, people that have reported a roost and then estimated the amount of number of monarchs that were in that tree. I was kind of especially intrigued by the, let's see, September 21st up in Iowa. Somebody estimated 1,000. And that's not impossible because you get all the monarchs together. It can be a staggering number in a tree. So, but you can go on here, you can click on those little photos and it'll show you the photo they took of the roost. So there are still, some of these places are still kind of north. So that's why I think we'll still see some monarchs working their way south yet. So just about done here, but this is some photos of the Oyamel forest. This is where the monarchs overwinter. So I showed you one earlier, but the monarchs will cling to those trees. And that bottom left photo, those are monarchs that are turning those trees orange. So that is the abundance that will show up. Now that photo also shows kind of a negative impact because it shows deforesting happening as well. So all that bare ground used to be Oyamel forest. So there's a lot of conservation efforts, going into protecting that area because of the importance for these monarchs to have that place to go to. So this is kind of on my bucket list to go to someday. You can visit this. It's a refuge. You can go there. You can kind of experience the monarchs, in their overwintering location. This is the little village. This is kind of like vacation pictures, but believe me, I've never been there. So El Rosario, Mexico is the little village right next to the Oyamel forest. I'm not going to play the YouTube video, but I encourage you to watch it. If I played it for you tonight, it would be super choppy. It wouldn't be a very good experience, but I would encourage you to watch that. It's a great video that really helps you understand that area that the monarchs overwinter in and how beautiful it is. So, and then finally, just a couple of other ways to get involved. Some different websites you can check out. Journey North is a great one. They also they will do birds, monarchs, a variety of different types of wildlife. Monarch Watch, again, is specifically monarchs. Monarch SOS, and then Xerxes is another one that you can check out to get involved. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions, and hopefully we got quite a few in the chat there.
We do have some questions. Before we get to those, I do want to just mention a couple of things for folks who joined late because we've had some questions on them. Tonight's program is being recorded. I will send out a separate email with the link to the video on our MCPL YouTube channel once it is available. It will probably be a couple days. But after the program this evening, you will receive an email from me with the handout, as well as the link to the survey for tonight's program. So you can take a moment to fill that out and share your thoughts with us. So let's move on to the questions. I've heard you should not take the caterpillars out of the native garden to raise. I have a pollinator garden and have seen at least 5. I grow purple and butterfly weed. Is there a benefit to bringing them in?
It's always better to leave them. So there is not a benefit, to where the caterpillar is going to be, better off if you brought them in. So I would encourage you to leave them out there unless, you wanted to provide like a teaching moment to, child or grandchild or something like that. But otherwise, they're best left where they are. Enjoy them out there. Let them do their thing. Monarchs are very interesting in that they get disoriented if they are moved around in distance. So, if you take them out of a garden and you only just take them inside, really close, not really a big deal. But, back to what I said with transporting monarchs or caterpillars a distance away from where they were collected, that's where it becomes kind of a problem because they become very disoriented. They do have an internal compass that they use for migration. So that's the other part I would add to that.
Okay, our next question, how do you tag monarchs without hurting them?
You got to be very, very gentle. It's hard to, I can show this to you much better than describe it, but you net, so you use a very fine net, lightweight net to capture a monarch. And then I very carefully take them out of the net, make sure that all the wings are held together so that they're controlled along the main vein of the wings. And then I think the tagging works easiest if there's 2 people. So if I'm holding the monarch and controlling the wings, then the other person would be placing the tag onto the, it's called the discal cell. It's kind of a mitten shaped cell on the wing is where that little sticker will go. And it's all about just being very, very, careful, taking your time, and if you do that, they're pretty hardy and they'll be fine.
And to follow up on that, then, do you have information for tagging? And
so what I would recommend, I do have that information here, but what I would recommend is going to the Monarch Watch website. When you get onto that website, there will be a whole, I think they have a whole like tab at the top that is related to tagging, and you can learn all about it. It'll go into more detail about where the little tags get placed, and you can even pull up past databases of the monarchs that made it to Mexico. So we were lucky. It's been several years ago, but we did have 2 monarchs that were tagged here at the Discovery Center several years ago that made it all the way to Mexico, and they were reported down there. So that's pretty cool when you get that to happen. So Monarch Watch will be your best site to get more information. If you come on Saturday, I'll definitely give you more information too.
okay, what do you do with OE infected butterflies?
Yeah, if you know that one is infected, the best thing to do is, they're not going to survive. So, you get rid of them, definitely away from other monarchs. But it's tricky because OE does not always show, a monarch can be infected with it and not show any signs of having it at all. But if you do see one that, let's say it emerges from a chrysalis and, it just has a really deformed wing, or it's just, maybe it comes out and it's just not even alive, it's most likely got OE, and then you just want to get rid of it.
And then what do the butterflies eat in the forest in Mexico?
So they do not eat a lot down there. Now there are some, flowers and stuff down there, kind of in the lower altitudes. The OML forest is at a pretty high altitude. So that fourth generation that makes it down there, they will drink water, but they're not as active flying around as much as what we see in the summertime up here. So they've made, a 3,000-mile trip to Mexico, and really they kind of just hang out in the trees. If it warms up, it's a sunny day. And when you watch that video, you'll kind of see it. They will kind of flutter around, and there may be some other flowers and stuff that they can find some nectar, but they're not in a high state of activity like we see in the summertime. So it's a little different.
Why is there a huge discrepancy between the migratory lifespan and the summer lifespan? Are these two different populations?
It's the same. It's a different generation. The difference in, like the ones that we have here in the summertime are only living 5 weeks. They're mainly mating and laying eggs. That fourth generation, called the super generation, they're just kind of a stronger generation that is about pushing that big long migration to Mexico. Why that generation is stronger and is able to do that big push and live 6 to 9 months, I don't know all the answers, as to why that is. That's kind of the cool thing, I think, with wildlife. There's some things that are just kind of, unexplainable, that you just kind of, hard to understand and explain, I guess. But it's not necessarily you could call that fourth generation a different population in the fact that it's a new generation of monarchs, that super generation. But so I can look into that more, but I don't have the resources right in front of me and the time to do that. So if you want to reach out to me by email, I can probably help get a better answer on that.
And someone asks, do we contact Monarch Watch to get tags?
Yeah, so Monarch Watch is the only one that sells tags. And so I usually reach out to them and order them in late July. They are not going to mail the tags out until it becomes the right timing for you to tag monarchs, because you don't want to put a tag on a second or third generation monarch. You want the tags to be on the fourth generation. So you wouldn't tag monarchs in June or July. You tag them you can start kind of late August, but primarily for us, it's going to be the month of September and kind of early October. So I order them in late July. They usually arrive kind of the early to mid-August, and Monarch Watch is who you'd order them through.
Okay. And we're going to do 2 more questions here. The first is, when looking for native plants and milkweed in local nurseries, is there a grower seal tag indicating that plants are organic? i.e. not sprayed with pesticides?
I mean, I would think so, and I would think that whoever you're purchasing them from, they would be able to provide that answer in an honest way. That's what I would hope, that whoever if it's a reputable native plant company you're buying from, they would be able to tell you that they haven't been sprayed with stuff. So I know that, the stuff that we grow here at the Discovery Center that we give away, we don't put anything on it, as far as pesticides or anything like that. So I would talk to whoever you're buying them from if there is not anything labeled on the plants.
And then our final question, are they storing energy in Mexico for the migration in the spring?
So I'm not exactly sure what that question means, as far as energy. As far as the Monarchs, okay, now I think I'm there. So are the Monarchs storing energy in Mexico for the spring? Okay, so the Monarchs that make it to Mexico, the 4th generation, yes, they are kind of holding back some energy, enough energy to head out in the spring, to get far enough to be able to lay eggs. So that's why they're not super active in the wintertime down there. They do a lot of clinging to the forest trees like you saw in those photos.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you for everybody for coming this evening. We've had a great presentation, a lot of wonderful information here. I will send that email out with the slides attached and the link to the survey here in a few minutes. Steve's email will be in the attachment in the handout, and you can reach out to him if you have further questions. And we hope you'll join us for some future programs. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Night.